Okay, I mentioned earlier, I am a talker, a mover, so try to stay close to the microphone. I'm also loud. This whole seminar thing was Wayne's idea. It really was. I was hesitant. Hesitant is a small word for how I felt about it. And I told him, I said, I'm going to have to pray about this. I'm going to have to look at this and pray about this. But when we did our first one, we did it at our home congregation in Colorado. So I'm like, okay, I can talk to these people. These are people I know. I can do this. But when we sat down to plan the lessons, he said, I'd like you to do some breakout lessons, because I was doing ladies' things at different places. So I wasn't nervous about speaking, but I said, well, what kind of lessons do you want me to share? What are you thinking? And he said, well, I think the first breakout lesson should be about what a godly wife looks like, what God has called you to be as a godly wife. And I went, oh, brother. And I said, do you understand that as women, we get that all the time? We get it all the time. Every ladies' Bible class, every ladies' day, every ladies' retreat, series of sermons. I don't very seldom hear them on the husband, but we get them on the wife. And I said, so I don't know that I want to do that. And again, he asked me, he said, I need you to pray about it. He said, I think this is a good place to start, and so I'd like you to do that. Well, I did. I stepped back, and I prayed about it, and I started thinking about it, and I thought, okay, here I am in my marriage. Here we are as women in marriage, and I made these promises to my husband, and I had to remind myself that the promises that I actually made were to God. Those were the promises I made. Now, Wayne benefits from those promises, but I made those promises to God. In fact, it helps me on those days when I want to shove Wayne out of the car, those days where it's like, ugh, I don't even like you today. And I'm like, wait, I promised God that I would work through this, kind of thing. So it made me stop and think, okay, I made no promises to God. And in my Christian walk, I want to be more like Jesus every day. I want to be doing that, not just for myself, but to bring God glory. So I thought, okay, we'll talk about this. We'll talk about what does the godly wife look like. And I probably won't share anything you haven't heard before. You're just going to get it through my filter, and that can be interesting. So I want to share those things with you. And so the first thing that I looked at, the first thing I came up with was a wife becomes a helpmeet. That's the word that was given to me back in the 80s when I got married. A wife is given as a helpmeet, and we take that actually from Genesis, where God created Adam, and he walked all the animals by Adam, and there was no one for Adam, and Scripture tells us that he created a helper suitable for Adam, a helper suitable for Adam. Well, when I first got married, Wayne and I got married on a Friday night. On Saturday, we headed to Denver. Sunday, we moved into Denver, and I lived in Denver for about 6 weeks and kind of looked up and went, hey, where's my mom? And it hit me that I had moved hundreds of miles. I lived in Oklahoma, left my mom in Oklahoma and moved to Denver, and I had no mom, and I was struggling. But I was in a wonderful congregation, and I had an older woman in my life at that point. She was actually an elder's wife at that point, that just loved all over me. And she helped me through some of these things. So when I was looking at this helper suitable and what that looks like, I was asking her, what does this helper suitable mean? Because I don't think I'm a helper suitable for Wayne. I said, he's a girl, I'm a boy. Every marriage book I've read, I'm going, I am the man. That's so weird. And Wayne's the girl. And I always, as a young woman reading all those books, thought maybe there was something wrong with me, I did. Because be careful of the books you read, because they can plant weird thoughts in your head. So be careful of that. But I'm looking, going, a helper suitable. Well, when Wayne and I moved into our first apartment, here we are moving into our first apartment. We dated 4 months before we got married, so I basically married a stranger. So I'm moving into this apartment, and he's setting up his little desk in the corner, and he's putting all of his stuff away. And I remember walking by and seeing that desk, and everything in the desk drawers had a place. There was these little cubbies, and everything had a place in the desk drawers, and I walked by and went, okay, so that's who he is. Everything has a place. So I went into the bedroom and decided to unpack my socks and underwear, and I got my box of socks and underwear, and I'm putting it away in the drawer, and Wayne walks by, and he goes, what are you doing? And I went, I'm unpacking. He goes, you gonna fold those socks and underwear? And I went, I said, who folds socks and underwear? I said, you dive in, get what you need, and get out. That's all you do. And he goes, oh, and he's looking at me, and he goes, I think most people fold socks and underwear. So when I started looking at this helper suitable, I went, uh-oh. I don't know that I'm the helper suitable for him. Well, my wonderful friend Mary Ann, she said, no, you need to relax just a minute. She said, here's Adam. God parades the animals by, and God didn't create another guy for Adam to have a buddy. You know, it wasn't a buddy he needed. He could have had a dog if that was it, if he just needed a companion. He created a female. And she said, Tammy, whether you believe it or not, you are the female. You are that balance. You are that balance. In fact, the word in Hebrew is a spinoff of the word Ebenezer. It's that word Ezer, means strength. God created Eve to be Adam's strength. And that means without us, they're lost. They're not complete. So that's why we are there. We balance them out. And you know, in your marriage, if you've been married any amount of time, you have strengths in your personality, and he has different strengths in his. You may be better with money than he is, or whatever it might be. And you find a way to balance each other out. You balance them out. And it's an ongoing process. In fact, we're in a different phase of life now, and my balance for Wayne is a little different. And every time we go off on a new adventure and our life changes, and we do that a lot now because we can. And so it's like, okay, our life has changed. This is how I will balance him. You know, it is kind of an unthought of thing. But we are a helper suitable because we're female. Because we're female, and we've come into that relationship to be that balance for him. So that helped me understand that better. And then the next thing, as a godly wife, we are called to be submissive. Now, I'll tell you, as a young woman, when I first sat in a ladies' Bible class talking about this submissiveness, and they gave me the definition was to put yourself under the authority of, or to be obedient to, I went, oh, that is so hard for me. I am one of those people that at birth I kind of slid out of my mom's womb and looked back up and went, okay, you're not the boss of me. You understand that? You are not the boss of me. I have a very strong, very rebellious, very independent personality. And so they're telling me, now you're going to put yourself under the authority of, and I'm like, oh, one more thing I'm going to fail at. That's all I could think. And so I look at God's word, and I can find several places where it says the wife will be submissive. Well, when I was talking to my friend Mary Ann about this, and she was taking me to God's word, she took me to a place, Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5, starting in verse 22, it says, wives, be subject to your own husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. But as the church is subject to Christ, so also the wives ought to be to their husbands in everything. And I saw that, and I'd seen that before, and so I understood that. I said, I see that in Scripture. And she said, but so often we have just skipped over the verse before that that says, and be subject to one another in the fear of Christ. And she said, submission is something we give to each other. It's a gift we're giving to each other. And so the more I looked at, the more I thought about that, submission actually is us striving to be like Jesus. When you look at Philippians chapter 2, where it says, this is the mind of Christ, having the mind of Christ, and regarding others is more important than yourself, and making sure you're, it's not Philippians 2 right there, but it's outdoing one another and doing good. That's what submission is. If I'm striving to be like Jesus, I'm striving to put myself aside for Wayne. That's what I'm striving to do. Now, it looks a little different in a marriage relationship than it would between me and Keeley. It's going to look different there because he's my husband. But it's something I'm willing to do. In fact, it's a gift that I choose to give him. A gift I choose to give him because I'm striving to be like Jesus. That's who I want to be like. And so this submission, the world has made it so ugly. They have painted this ugly picture of it that makes us look weak and incompetent. And that's not what God intended for submission to be. It's a beautiful thing that we do for each other, and a gift that we give to our husband, and a gift I give to you because I'm trying to be like Jesus. That's what submission is all about. It's this beautiful thing that we need to take back from the world and show them what it looks like. Doesn't mean I get trampled on. That's not what submission means. Submission means I'm going to think Wayne is more important than me. And that is so anti what the world teaches us. It is so opposite of what the world teaches us. But I'm striving to wrap my heart around lifting him up and placing him before me because I love him. Because I love him. Now, when I apply those verses to regard others as more important than myself and do for others, I can do that with a friend. But why is it so hard for me to do with the person I supposedly love the most on the planet? And I think it's because we've let the world convince us it's an ugly thing. And it's not. It's something beautiful that we have. And when you can wrap your heart around it, it makes it so much easier. Now, I don't think it comes easy to everyone. I think that's why Titus 2, older women teach the younger women. Boy, did I need to be taught. I needed to be shown what that looked like. And I watched the older women. And I would go to them, those women that I knew had a strong personality like me. And I knew they had a husband now. Now, God bless me with a strong husband, because I'd have walked all over a weaker man. But I watched some of these strong women that had more gentle husbands, and their husbands were the leader. And I went, how do you do that? And I would go to them, and I avoided those women that walked all over their husbands, because that wasn't submission. That wasn't laying yourself aside. So understanding that, find those people, circle yourselves with those people. Man, I loved having Marianne in my life. And I had others at that time too, but she was a feisty thing, so I related to her. And then the next thing is a godly wife. You see at the end of chapter 5 there in Ephesians, that last verse says, nevertheless, each individual among you also is to love his own wife, even as himself. And the wife must see to it that she respect her husband. Now, this respect your husband, this is to lift your husband up, to honor your husband. And I've put several things under the umbrella of respecting our husbands. And the first thing is we want to be careful how we talk about our husbands. How do you talk about your husband? And as a young wife, I had multiple kids, and I did daycare in my home too to help financially as we were trying to exist. And so I had children surrounding me. Well, ladies' class would go out to lunch after ladies' class. Well, I couldn't afford to do that, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun to take a whole handful of kids out to lunch. So I started asking the ladies to bring their lunch over to my house on Wednesdays after class, because I needed that fellowship. I needed that input. I needed friends in my life. So I started doing that. Well, we were sitting around one Wednesday eating lunch, and we were just talking. We weren't being malicious. We didn't mean to be hateful. We're just talking. And it just so happens that I had included Mary Ann that day. I would include older women because I needed them in my life as well, so I would always include them. But Mary Ann was the one there that day. So we're sitting around talking, and we're doing that thing that women do, and it was just that, man, Wayne doesn't know where the dirty clothes go. I think he thinks they're just going to reappear clean in his drawer magically, and we're just ha ha ha, and somebody else is saying, yeah, my husband, he's never put the cap back on the toothpaste, and we're just laughing, We're not being hateful. We're sharing real life, just talking, and we laughed hard. So the girls all left, and Mary Ann had hung out to help me kind of put the kids down for a nap and all. And so Mary Ann said, she goes, Tammy, today when the girls left, she said, do you think they thought more of Wayne, or do you think they thought less of him? And I went, what are you talking about? And she said, the things that you shared about Wayne today around the house. She said, when the girls left, do you think they thought more of him, or do you think they thought less of him? And I went, well, I didn't mean to share anything ugly. And she goes, I know, I'm not judging you. She goes, I've done it too, but we've been talking about respecting your husband. And I wanted to know if you thought that was lifting him up or tearing him down by the words you shared. And I went, ugh. I went, ooh, yikes. I said, I've never thought of it that way. And she goes, I know. I just wanted you to step back, step out of it, and think about what you shared about Wayne. Did you lift him up in their eyes? Did you show him respect? Or did you tear him down? I'm like, ugh, yuck. I'd never kind of stepped out of it and looked at it that way. Well, a few weeks later, we're having lunch again, and doing the same thing starts. The same thing starts because we're talking about our life. Well, when the first couple people say something, it kind of clicks in my head, and I'm like, oh no, we're doing it again. And I just kind of threw out something, and I think it was Wayne cooked for me last night. My husband can out-cook most grandmas. He is amazing. But I think it was something along the lines of Wayne cooked for me last night. It was so good. And I promise you, the faces in the room kind of went, well, my husband, he mowed like he never mowed before, kind of thing. And all of a sudden, we're one-upping each other on how great our husbands were. And it was like, wow. But be careful. What do you share about your husband? How do you portray your husband? In fact, I like to illustrate it like this. We had a dog when we lived in Colorado, a little fun dog. And he'd gone out in the backyard, and he'd come in, and he'd spit something at my feet in the kitchen, and it was a furry something. And I thought, so I got a broom, and I kind of poked it, kind of flipped it over, because I wanted to see if it was dead or alive, kind of thing. And when I flipped it over, I realized it was one of my bedroom slippers, one of my house slippers. I'm like, that's where that thing has been. And Emerald had taken that slipper out in the backyard, drug it through the dirt, buried it in the dirt, dug it up, and spit it at my feet. And I thought, how many times do I do that with my words to Wayne? Do I drag him through the dirt, bury him, dig him up, and spit him at the feet of other people where he's not even recognizable? He just looks like a dirty clump. And I have to step back and think, okay, how do I talk about Wayne to others? When I'm through talking about Wayne, and we have sarcasm running deep in our family, and I have to remember, especially when I'm with a group like this, as he's talking, I think of little funny things I want to say, but I'm like, they don't know me, and they don't know him. And if I say something that sounds slightly negative, you're going to think I'm being ugly to him. And so it's made me stop and watch my words. How do I talk about my husband? Now, also under that umbrella of respect, not just how I talk about him, but how do I talk to him? How do I talk to him? I can remember standing in the foyer and a woman coming up, and I mean, the foyer was full of people. And she looked at her husband and she says, I told you to go get the car. And she looked up and she goes, oh, man wouldn't know how to dress himself if I didn't help him. And I'm like, please God, don't let me be that person. Please God, don't. And I thought, And I kind of prayed for him because I thought, he must be miserable. But how do you talk to your husband? Are you respectful to him? Do you lift him up with your words? We all have our moments, ladies. We're not perfect. But what are we striving to be? What are we working to be? And I promise you, once you start planting those seeds in your head and praying about God, put a filter on my tongue, that powerful flapping sword I've got in my mouth, God will start doing that for you. He will. But we have to be aware of it and we have to be focused on it. And then under the umbrella of respect, I've also put, we need to be better listeners with our husbands. We're told all the time that women have all of these hundreds of words we need to share at the end of the day. You know, we've come in from work or your husband comes home from work and you've been there. And all these words you need to share with him. And we need to remember that men are a different breed. Wayne's odd bird, but men are a different breed. They seldom share deep things. They just don't. They just normally don't do that. But if your husband comes in and he's wanting to talk to you and he's wanting to share with you, you need to remember to perk up and listen. You need to do that. Because as women, we'll either have a friend or a mom or somebody that we know we can share with other than our husband. We might share with him too, but we have other people. Husbands don't normally do that. They normally just share those things with you. And so understanding that and being aware that when he starts opening up and talking, be a better listener. Listen to him. Don't try to be a mom to him. Don't do that for him. And I know men can be fixers. I tend to be the fixer. And so I have to keep my mouth shut. Make sure I'm just listening. Sometimes they just need somebody to listen to them. So be a better listener. And then that silence is golden. Silence is only golden if you're not being hateful. If you're one of those that gets a good mad on and shuts down, you need to be very careful of that. I am not. Wayne and I are both very vocal. I'm surprised we have friends from when we were early married. I'm like, because we are both very vocal. But I am also the one, I voice it, I get it out there, but I'm done then. I need to step back because I've sharpened the sword. It's like if I don't step back, I'm going to tear him to shreds. And Wayne is, every argument has 4 points and a conclusion because he's got that preacher vein going through him. And so he goes on, and I feel like he's going, and I've had to express it. He's so much better now because I told him there's a point when we're arguing where I don't hear him anymore. I just hear wah, 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 because I've shut him out because I don't work that way when I'm angry. But he understands that. I'm not the silent type. In fact, we go to church one Sunday. Actually, it was a Wednesday night, I think. I got in Wednesday night, and I ran into this guy, and his wife had been sick on Sunday. And so I asked him, I said, hey, how's your wife feeling? And he said, I don't know. And I went, what do you mean you don't know? I said, she was sick. They said she was sick Sunday. And he goes, yeah, she's got some kind of a mad on, and she hasn't talked to me in 3 days. And my first thought that went through my head was, what did you do? That's what I'm thinking. What did you do? But I thought, wow. He goes, all she's doing is doing that. There. No. I'm like, oh, she does have a good man going. She's got a good man on. But it made me realize that's not okay. That's not respectful. We have to figure out a different way to show that anger, to make sure that you're not just shutting them out because you're mad. Make sure you've communicated, I need a minute here. Need to work through this mad just a little bit. But make sure you're not being just hateful. Make sure you're watching that. I've also put under respect, and I don't even know if it belongs here, but I put it here. Make sure in your marriages that you're building a life together. We're going to look some more in Wayne's next lesson on what that togetherness, that one flesh looks like. Well, as a married couple, we need to make sure we're doing that. We're building a life together. And there are things that I'm going to do to include Wayne in my life out of respect for him. My husband is a controller. He just is. He's old school. He is that person, and I let him think he's in control most of the time. I let him think that, give that to him. But he needs to know if I go out and run errands, he'd like to know where I'm going. And now we're so blessed now to have cell phones. I can just send him a text, but back in the day, if my plans changed, I had to find a convenience store or something and have a quarter and call Wayne and say, my plans have changed. I'm going to be away from the house longer than I intended. But I needed to do that because he would think I would be dead in a ditch somewhere. I needed to communicate with him. Now, we had a couple that we would do things with when we were younger. And when we would do things with this couple, I would have to call the wife, and Wayne would have to call the husband to see if they could come to do dinner, like on a Friday night. Call and ask them to go to dinner. And I can remember multiple times that one of them showing up, the husband would show up first and go, do you know if my wife is coming? I'm like, do you people never talk? But they never compared calendars. They lived basically two different lives. Now, they don't do that anymore, but they did in their early years of marriage. They had two separate lives, and that's not healthy. I include Wayne in my life because I'm really working out of respect to him. I'm working to make sure we're that one flesh thing. So I don't know if it goes in respect, but I've put it there. So understanding that respecting our husbands is all about lifting them up, seeing them in that way. Plant that in your head. Pray about that. Have God plant that in your head, that you see him in a positive way. It's easy for us to just see their flaws. Well, I hate it when Wayne just sees my flaws. I hate that. I hate it. So I'm working really hard to not voice the flaws, but voice when I see the positive. Voice when I see the positive. So respecting our husbands, that's part of our role. The next part, and we're not going to talk about right now, but a part of the role of a godly wife is a lover. That's part of our role. And we've actually, our last breakout today, we'll talk about as women. We'll talk about what that looks like. Now, don't get panicked. I'm not talking details here. That would make me vomit. But we feel like we need to talk about this in the church because nobody does. So we're going to talk about it. And then the next thing is when, as a godly wife, we are a friend. You need to be a friend to your husband. I love Song of Solomon 5:16 says, "This is my beloved, and this is my friend." Wayne and I didn't date very long. We didn't know each other. And it would be hard for me to say, yeah, I married my best friend at that point because I didn't know him very well. But he is my best friend now. He is my best friend now. I have a hard time when ladies will go, okay, we're going to go away for the weekend. Do you want to go? And I'm like, how about I bring Wayne and he cooks for us? I struggle with that. Now, I think those times are good for us too. They're refreshing. Those are refreshing times. We need those. But you need to step back and ask yourself, if you would rather go away with your girlfriends, your female friends, than your husband, you might ask yourself why. Why is that? Is he your friend? You need to be working on that friendship like you did back in the day when you were dating. You know, back in the day when you were dating, and he'd go, hey, why don't you go hang out with your friends Saturday? I think I'm just going to stay at home and watch college football. That's all I'm going to do. And you're going, oh, let me come with you. I'll bring snacks. I love college football. And you're going, I hate college football, but I like you. You know, it's that effort that you put out to be their friend, to have things in common with them. Don't quit that. And if you have quit it, start it again. Start it again. Find ways to connect with your husband. Find things that you enjoy doing together. Wayne and I are so different. We are so different. When we first married, musicals, he likes Broadway musicals. He just loves them. And in my head, I'm like, I don't understand why they're singing all the words. Why can't they just talk? I don't get it. I didn't like them. I didn't like it at all. It's frustrating to me. And I like them now. I like them a lot. In fact, I felt like the scene from Pretty Woman when I went to my first musical. I'm sitting on the edge of my chair going, this is awesome. But I didn't know that until I married a man that likes Broadway musicals. And now I can get him to listen to some Southern rock. I am a rock person, and so I can get him to listen to that. He doesn't have to listen to Broadway all the time. But we're two different people, and we've given in some of those things. Not even given in. We've learned to like new things on top of what we did like because we love each other, and we're building that friendship together. Don't ever stop. This is an area where I have women talking to me all the time. He's not my friend anymore. I've made this friend at work. Careful, careful. Your husband needs to be your friend. Concentrate on that, focus on that, and pray about that. Make sure that you have that friendship relationship. And then the next thing is, I'm going to give you the term they gave me when I was a newlywed. You are, a godly wife is a homemaker. And we take that from Titus 2, where it says, older women, the New American Standard Version says, older women teach the younger women to be a keeper of the home. A keeper of the home. Well, if you go and study that and look at that, not that I was looking for a loophole or anything, but if you go and study that, that word actually means our role as a godly wife is, I am going to be the guard of my home. That's what it means, to guard the keep. That's where that word keeper kind of came from. I'm going to guard the keep. And what that looks like is we work to make sure our home is a place of refuge for our family, that castle. We're going to guard the castle walls. I want to make sure my home is a place of peace, a place where my family wants to be, a place where my husband wants to be. Now, back in my day, the way they painted that picture was, I wish I had this. I had a page from a ladies' Bible class book, a study book, that was written in the 50s, I think, that's how they taught me. That when your husband comes home at the end of the day, you have on your pearls and you have on your best dress and have on nice heels because they like high heels. And I said, and it says you have to have the kids lined up on the couch, have them clean and dressed nicely, lower the lights because he's had a hard day, and then make sure dinner's on the table with a nice tablecloth and candles are nice because you are showing him that you love him. And make sure the house is spotless. And I'm reading that, and they're teaching that in class, and I'm going, oh, failure. That's just not real. That's just not, I mean, I could have the nice dinner on the table and maybe a nice dress and pearls if the kids weren't there. You know, maybe I could do that. But I looked and thought, this is ridiculous. We are asking so much of women. And now I have 4 sons and a daughter. We didn't keep going. It just kept happening. They said, oh, you kept going to hit a girl. Not really. But we have 4 sons. And so my sons are getting married, and I'm watching their homes. And my home looks the way it does because my husband's mother is psychotic. Her house was spotlessly clean all the time because her husband was a preacher and he was constantly bringing people in their home, and she kept it spotless, and she ironed sheets and the whole bit, and so that's what my husband liked. Now, it took me, and this is part of our job in this guard, it took me communicating with Wayne and going, okay, probably never going to iron sheets. Probably never going to do that. But I know you need this neat and orderly. Because otherwise he got a little grumpy. And that wasn't fun either. So he knew when he came in, we had kids from the very beginning, he knew when he came in that if there was a toy on the floor, pick it up. Pick it up. Just pick it up and throw it in the corner. And we learned to work together to keep our house neat. Like he needed it neat. It wasn't spotless. No, we had 5 kids in daycare. We had that going on. But I knew that's what Wayne needed. Well, as my sons are getting married and their houses didn't look like mine, it made me realize, step back. They are godly men raising godly families. Their home is a place of refuge for their family. They're hospitable. They have people in all the time. That's all it's about. That's what it's supposed to be about. But we live in a world that we compare each other's homes. oh, her home is so clean I could never have her over to my house. That's not right. That's not right. You need to talk with your husband. What do we need to do to make this a place of refuge for our family? Talk about it, and then see who needs to do what to make that happen. But it still falls on you to make sure we know who's doing what to get that to happen, because you are the guard of your home. That's what you do. It's not just a homemaker. It's a guard your home. Are you guarding your home against sin? Or are you opening the door to sin through entertainment? I mean, there's so much that goes on with that. Guard your home. That's your role as a godly wife. I do think it's something that we need to be taught. It's something that we need to look at. But be careful of comparing yourself to somebody else. That's not what this is about at all. This is about sitting down with your husband and going, okay, how do we make this a refuge that we love to be at? What do we need to do here? How do we work together? That's what that role is all about. It's making your home a place that everybody wants to be at, that your family wants to be at. I call the role of the godly wife from stilettos to orthopedic shoes. That's our journey. We start out in stilettos where it's like, oh, baby, I love you so much, and everything's wonderful, and it's an adventure, and oh, it's so great. And then I went instantly into running shoes with children. You just have to. Children do affect your marriage. I kind of chuckle when I hear a young couple that haven't had kids yet. Well, when we have kids, it won't change a thing in our life. I'm like, you just better buckle up. Kids affect your marriage. They just do. It changes things. But you need to make sure when you get into that mommy stage, if you choose to get into that mommy stage or are blessed to be in that mommy stage, remember your husband still comes first. And this is hard. This is hard. You can't say, I put the baby in the basement. It's just us for the weekend. You know, you can't do that. It's not real life. So you have to figure out a way to work it out. But your husband needs to know that he comes first. Make sure. This is a place, even in Christian marriages, where women get so wrapped up in being mommy that they forget they're a wife. And they forget their wife. And when those children leave home, that mom and dad have no relationship whatsoever because they've wrapped their whole life around those children. Careful. Careful of that. So as you're going through that mommy phase of life, make sure that you're pulling your husband in and letting him know, I do love you. You hold this one. I'll be back. I want to talk to you. Make sure you're doing that for him. And then I went into a phase as my kids were becoming independent and didn't need me continually. I kind of got lost. In fact, I can remember as a young woman watching older women hitting that age and going, the older women would be going, man, I don't even know who I am anymore. I've got to find myself. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? You are right there. I don't understand this at all. And then it happened to me. And my kids didn't need me. I had been mommy for so long, I didn't know who Tammy was anymore. I struggled with who Tammy was. And I had more time on my hands because my kids didn't need me continually. Now we had a lot of activities going on, but they didn't require my constant time, and I had more time on my hands. Well, in fact, I started working out. I was blessed to have a little bitty grandma, and most of my life I've weighed nothing. So I was blessed by that. But I started working out and went to church one Sunday night, and I was modestly dressed. I had a denim skirt on and cowboy boots and some kind of white shirt. I don't know. But I go into church, and I have a man pass me, and he goes, I've noticed, I need you to know you're doing a good job. And I went, thanks, because I've been walking and exercising and all these things. And I went, thank you. And I felt pretty good about myself. Second man comes by, and he goes, you're looking really good. I just wanted you to know it. We've noticed. And I'm like, thank you. The third man, same night, comes along and he says, you look really good. And I'm like, I'm like, oh, what is happening? What? And I had to kind of step back. I kind of lost my focus a little bit. I started focusing. It's okay to take care of yourself. That's not what I'm saying here. I had a woman attack me one time because she went to the gym, and I'm like, that's not what I said. Go to the gym. Balance. Find a balance in there. Make sure if you need to take care of yourself, do that, but find a balance. So I struggled in there. In fact, when I went to Wayne at this time, I said, man, I'm struggling. I don't even know who I am anymore. He went, maybe you should get a hobby. And I'm like, I will poke your eyes out of your head. It is so much deeper than this. He didn't understand that. I'm like, get a hobby. That's not the cure-all for everything. But make sure you find somebody to talk about. Make sure you talk about with your husband if you hit that wall where you're a little bit lost. We might call it midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. Weird things happen in marriages at this phase. Make sure you're talking about it with your husband. Make sure you're talking about it. And then I went from there back into high heels, but it was pumps. Not very high, but they were pumps. It was a phase of life where we had reached a point in our life where my children were grown. They were out of the house. A couple of them had made bad decisions, but I finally had found a peace with God because I knew that I'm not in charge of that anymore. I had done what I could do. God gave me the peace of going, as long as they're breathing, there's hope, kind of thing. In fact, I wear a bracelet every day that says hope on it because there's always hope. And it's a new phase of life for Wayne and I, and we can do whatever we want. We can go wherever we want. We don't have to circle around a bunch of children anymore. That's a wonderful phase of life, and we've done it together. Now, we've been through some struggles. We have been unfaithful to each other, and we have come back and said, no, but God, we are going to work through this. We will not let Satan win this. And so we get to that orthopedic shoe phase of life, and mine is right here, and some of you are thinking, I think you're in it. I think you're in the orthopedic shoe stage. But I'm looking at it, and I call it that because growing up, my mom, when I was a teenager in the 70s, my mom had bad feet. They started, I don't know what all she's got going on, but she had to wear nursing shoes in the 70s. Well, in the 70s, nursing shoes were either a big chunk of white plastic or a big chunk of black plastic. They were awful. And all I could think was, please, God, don't do that to me. I don't want to have to wear those awful shoes. And then I hit an age, and I was in a shoe store one time, and I was walking by, and on the end cap it said, like walking on a cloud or walking on a pillow or something. And I looked at the shoes and I thought, those are cute shoes. I think they're cute shoes. And I put one down and put it on, and it was awesome. It was so comfortable. And a little teenager that worked there came around the corner, and I said, hey, I got to ask you a question. I said, see these shoes? Do you think these are old lady shoes? And she looked down and she went, no. And I went, I said, come on, really, do you think they look like old lady shoes? And she goes, well, they're kind of cute. And I went, I don't care what you think. They are comfortable, and I'm going to get them. And I bought them, and I walked out of the shoe store, and he goes, hey, you bought shoes, what'd you buy? And he looked in the box, and he went, you bought old lady shoes. I went, yes, I did. But they're comfortable. They're comfortable. It's a phase of your life where doesn't mean everything is perfect. I mean, there's still money issues. They may be worse than before. There's health issues, maybe worse than before. There's all these kind of different phases that you've gone through, but you've done it together. You've done it together. You haven't quit. And that's what we're all looking for, is to hit that orthopedic shoe stage of life where it's like we're comfortable. We can still argue. We still have problems, but we're going to do it together. And that's my prayer for all of us, is that we remember that. We can do this. And I want to end with this scripture. As we're looking at this role of a godly wife, don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. That doesn't help you. Doesn't help you a bit. That just weighs you down and makes you go, I'm done. Don't do that. Look at the scripture, 2 Corinthians 4:16. 2 Corinthians 4:16 says, therefore, do not lose heart. Though the outer man is decaying, the inner man is being renewed day by day. That's what we're doing. Every day before you get up, just pray, Lord, help me be better today than I was yesterday, and forgive me if I'm not. Every day is a do-over. So take that and pray on that. Don't put pressure on yourself. I wanted to lift you up and encourage you and give you these thoughts to dwell on. So thank you, ladies. I'm done.